Hello, everyone, and a blessed Saturday to all. Today's Gospel is a passage that we're all very, very familiar with. It's from the second chapter of St. Luke. It's the story of the finding of Jesus in the temple. We've heard it so many times. We've meditated on it in the Rosary. We know this one inside out and backwards, don't we? Or do we? Jesus travels with Joseph and Mary in what seems to have been a fairly large caravan, likely made up of extended family and neighbors from Nazareth in Galilee, for the long trip down to Jerusalem for Passover. This was a fairly common practice in that time. Folks would want to spend the high holy days at the temple in the holy city when it was at all possible, and so many people did. For poorer families from poorer towns, like a village like Nazareth in Galilee, this would not have been an every year or several times a year occurrence. This might well be something that a family would have to save up for years, just to be able to afford the trip. It's a big deal. And Luke tells us that Jesus was about 12 years old when this story takes place. This is a very, very important age in the life of a young, devout Jewish boy. This would be just about the right age for his bar mitzvah. So maybe Jesus had been recently bar mitzvahed or was about to be bar mitzvahed, or maybe he received his bar mitzvah in Jerusalem. It was right around that time in his life. So he's going to be very, very interested in the scriptures, of course. And for young Jesus, son of Joseph and Mary, this trip is a really, really, really big deal. Now, we usually interpret this passage in a way that seems to show us that young Jesus was already fully aware of his identity as the Messiah, as the Son of God, fully aware of his divinity. Well, theologically speaking, the question of just how much Jesus understood and when he came to understand the extent of his identity, what it meant to be the Messiah, both God and man, that's something theologians have debated for centuries. And frankly, extreme positions on both sides of that argument have over the centuries led to periods of heresy and schism, sometimes even violence. So theological arguments can get very intense. But let's you and I steer clear of that today. That sounds like a safe idea. And remember, too, that when St. Luke writes this story in his gospel, he's writing at least 60 to 70 years after the event. So I think we have to credit Luke with a fairly good piece of hindsight, making up his point of view when he's writing. But I'd like to look at this gospel passage today in terms of, well, normal family dynamics, the way your family and mine, the way families act. Okay. Now, we can all picture, I think, if your parents think about your children around age 12. Yeah. If you're not a parent, or just you choose to, think about yourself around the age of 12. For most of us, that's just not our favorite point in life. But we all think back and we look at our 12-year-old selves, and Jesus in this gospel passage is not very different. He is off on the big trip of his lifetime. He's either just become officially an adult and a member of the synagogue, or he's about to. He's just at the age when he's feeling his importance. And he's at an age, well, frankly, think back to being 12. Many 12-year-olds start to think that they're smarter than their parents, and they're certainly way cooler than their parents. Jesus is a pretty normal kid, as messiahs go. So he wants to hang out with the rabbis and the scribes because they spend all of their time studying the very scriptures he's been working so hard to understand. They spend all their time on the things that he's so interested in. And, well, along the way, he manages to neglect to inform mom and dad that he's going to hang out with them. Now let's look at the reunion scene at the end of the gospel passage. They're traveling home. Joseph and Mary realize that Jesus isn't with either one of them. They're panicked. They're worried. Where's our son? Where's our son? As any parent would be. And they travel back to Jerusalem, and they look and look and look and look, and they find him. And, well, Jesus' response, Mary asks, "What, we've been looking all over for you. Where have you been?" We've heard that probably from our parents at some time in our life. But Jesus' response sometimes sounds sort of otherworldly, doesn't it? Almost like it's in an unearthly voice. "Why did you not know I'd be about my Father's house?" If we look at it another way, we can also see a pretty 12-year-old answer. I think I can almost hear the tisk, right? "Oh, Mom, why didn't you know I'd want to be here at the temple with the scribes and the rabbis? What's the matter with you? Why don't you know this?" In short, the Holy Family was a real, live, honest-to-God family, like us. Isn't that wonderful? They understand our lives. Jesus looks upon us so warmly and lovingly and forgivingly because he understands us. He understands that we're trying to do our very imperfect best. So let's rejoice this week that our God sees us and loves us just as we are. Good enough. You're loved in the eyes of God as you are, as I am. And this week, let us continue to pray for Brother Chris and for everyone else for whom we've been asked to pray. My sisters and brothers, may the Lord give us all his peace.